Hello and welcome. Today we've got Victoria Reynolds and we will be discussing 4D. She says that too many people are looking at 3D to 5D, but we need to be focusing more on 4D as well. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And I will leave Victoria's links as well so you can follow her. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview, unless, of course, me and Victoria can choose our words wisely, and then we can keep the video up on YouTube due to the censorship that's going on. Is that okay, Victoria?
That sounds great.
Great. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for joining me. How are you and what's been happening?
I am fantastic. Now, since the last time, I don't remember, we talked quite a long time ago, and I don't remember what's happened since then. With regard to me, I think I had already gone through a transition with my family. What I was sharing with you just before we came online is that I sprained my wrist last week and I broke my toe last week. And so I tuned in, I was asking Spirit about that. Like, what is this all about? And the response that came in was that we've been out of balance. I've been out of balance. I wasn't doing enough self-care and doing my spiritual practices that I do in the morning. I'd gotten more into taking care of my kids and less into taking care of myself. And so a lot of us tend to have these codependent relationships. So this is a way of Spirit reminding me to get out of codependency and to go back into taking care of myself. But the other thing I found really interesting is how many other people I've talked to in the last 2 weeks that have also had physical injuries. And so I tuned in and I asked about that. I was like, why are so many people experiencing? And usually it's in the hands and in the feet, which I find really interesting. And what Spirit was explaining to me is that it's because our bodies are shifting and we're going through a growth spurt. And because our bodies are going through a growth spurt, it's causing us to feel off balance. So if we remember back to like middle school, when we started having these really big growth spurts and would fall over or not be able to navigate these bodies very well. So we're kind of going through that collectively again, which is why so many people are having these, they're not bad injuries, but enough to get our attention. And it's because our bodies are changing because of the light waves that are coming in and actually physically changing our bodies. So I got to experience that too.
Wow.
So a lot of other people.
So you're saying that the frequencies that is the new frequencies that we're receiving and vibrations and, Earth is going through a change. And, it's said that our DNA is, being upgraded. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. Yeah. Our bodies are shifting from carbon-based to crystalline-based. And so we're basically building new bodies. And
right.
It'll take a while for us to get used to. And every time we have an inflow of these light waves have been coming in, from my understanding, since about 2015. That's when I was told about them. And Saint Germain came in and explained to me about these light waves that would be coming, and they were coming slowly. And he said that they would increase and increase and increase over the years to get to the point where they would start to flood the planet. So we're starting to get the flood of these waves. And what he explained to me, we were calling them G waves and, God, goddess waves. We knew there were creation waves that were going to assist our ascension. And Saint Germain called them gamma waves. But I didn't know anything about gamma waves back then. But what was funny is I after I had received that message, I went in the house and started watching a movie with my kids. I think it was X-Men or Incredible, one of those superhero movies, right? Where the people were in space and they got hit by gamma waves and it activated their superpowers. And so Saint Germain was basically explaining that all these gamma waves that are coming onto the planet are going to start activating people's superpowers. So our bodies are shifting because of these light waves that are coming in. We can't see them because they're not like sunlight waves. They're just a different form of light. And so we're in this process right now of navigating this most current wave that came in around the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. But we had another level of light wave that came in. And so our bodies are having to shift and adjust to it.
So how often should we expect these light waves coming, coming here to Earth and affecting us and, us going through this change? How often should we expect this to happen, or is it just random?
Well, it's constant, and it's been coming. what I was being shown back in 2015 is that it was coming from a singularity. I didn't know what he meant by that, but it was kind of like coming through a portal, and that that it would get progressively stronger. And that my understanding is that the waves seem to align with our quarterly events. So we had a huge light wave that came in during the winter solstice on December 21st, another big one that came in during the spring equinox. So my impression is that although it's constant, the larger waves come in during our quarterly astrological events.
Right. It's very interesting. So, we're going through this change. What kind of things do you suggest we can do, for our bodies, that would help enjoy the journey of this, new frequencies and us going through this change with our bodies?
Well, the biggest thing is being willing to let go of everything that doesn't serve us. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is 4D, which seems to be ignored between the conversation between 3D and 5D. And that all of this is to remind us to let go of everything that doesn't serve us. So when we start to have experiences, for example, like I did with my wrist and with my toe, I tune in and I ask myself, what is my body trying to tell me? And I ask spirit, what is going on here that I need to know about? So instead of going into suffering, which is the natural human default, because we've been living in a fear-based reality, the natural default is to go into suffering and complain about what's going on and, whoa, all right, and go into like verbal throw up about what's going on in our lives, rather than tuning in and asking, what is this about? And what is my body trying to tell me? What is spirit trying to tell me? And how can I move through this with greater ease so that we don't sit in suffering any longer than we have to? And so that's the biggest key, is to continually ask spirit, ask up. Every one of us have access to our higher selves, and to always just ask up, what is this all about? And how is this serving me? And how can I move through this with the least amount of suffering possible? And the answers will be there. We just get wrapped up. The personality self wants to try to figure it out rather than asking spirit what it's all about.
So we know that 3D is very, it's all about ego and jealousy and material things and money and those kind of things, fear. So how would you compare 4D and 5D? What are the differences?
Well, 3D it's a fear-based reality. That's all of those words that you just mentioned are all based in fear. So the fear-based reality is where the natural default to everything in life is some fear-based reaction, until we learn how to consciously choose our responses to the circumstances, and then we can collectively consciously change our circumstances. So right now in this fear-based reality, that is the default. It's why the news spews fear. It's why our religions spew fear. It's why the schools spew fear, and we live in fear. Human beings are born as love in a body. Mm-hmm. All human beings know as babies is love. They learn fear because it's the reality that we're presently living in. And as much as we try to teach our children love, fear still seeps in because that's a reality that they've been born into presently. That will be shifting over the years as we move more and more into this 5D reality. 4D, I wasn't even aware of. I didn't even know this existed until about 2010. And a message came in from my higher self that 4D was that the message that came in was, I am you in the fourth dimension and our worlds are going to collide. I had no idea. I had never even heard the term dimension. So it was like, what the heck? And that was 2 years before it happened. So in December of 2012, 4D converged with 3D. So we are actually currently experiencing both 3D and 4D at the same time. So 4D is the bridge between 3 and 5. 3 is the fear-based reality that we've been living in. 5 is heaven on earth. So we used to have to die, leave our physical form in order to get to heaven. Now, after 2012, we've been invited to bring heaven to earth. And 4D makes that possible. So 4D is a non-physical reality. It's as physical as 3D, I guess, but that's where we do our spiritual work. That's where we process our lives. 4D is also where the dark side is being exposed because 4D is above the veil. So dimensions, and I have a couple of friends who also call them densities. They're not places. It's not like we're moving to a different dimension. It's a dimension of consciousness. So it's about lifting up the heaviness and the oppressiveness of the sphere-based 3D reality and moving through the veil of deception, which is what has held us in this 3D reality, and into 4D, which we now have immediate access to because it's right here present in our reality. So 4D is the level of consciousness, if you will, where people psychics have been able to tap into a person's life path. It's where spiritual gifts get activated. It's where the elementals, like the fairies and dragons, exist. It's also where the dark entities have existed. That's why they've been able to hide from us until now, because it's this dimension that kids can see into, but once their third eye gets shut down, they can't see that anymore, which is why children can see fairies and dragons and have invisible friends, because we as adults can't see them, but because a child's third eye is wide open, they can. So kids get, as we grow, we get shut off from this other dimension. So, but when 4D converged with 3D, that's when we started being able to see all these things that were once hidden, because they're not hidden so much anymore. So 4D converging with 3Ds allowed us to see the deception that's been happening in the world. And it's allowed us to see the corruption that's been happening in the world. It's been allowed us to see the evil that's been happening in the world. It's why people are starting to communicate with ETs, and we're starting to see, their spaceships. And it's why people are now communicating with the elementals, because that's 4D. And it's also where people's spiritual gifts get activated. That is why so many people are having a spiritual awakening, because it's right here in our reality. We no longer have to go through such work to activate our ability to see into the 4D, because it's present in our reality right now. And what I was being shown too with this convergence, so the convergence happened in December of 2012. People were expecting 2012, December, remember December 21st, 2012 was, we're going to start the new reality. And everybody was so excited about the new world that was coming in December 2012. Well, what they didn't realize is that actually did happen. What happened was 3D, 4D convergence that allows heaven on earth to occur, because without that bridge, we wouldn't be able to make the leap from 3D to 5D. 4D allows us to cross that bridge into 5D. So those people who have had their awakening experience are in 4D. We're all in 4D right now. There's a misperception that we're all in 5D, and we're not. We're all in 4D. Mm-hmm. And in various stages of 4D. So the lower 4D is what happens when a person first wakes up, right? They have the awakening experience. For some people, it's a really, really painful awakening experience. And it usually involves the death of something, the death of a business, the death of a job, the death of a reality, the death of a marriage. It usually involves something that it's like, I call it a shake awake. And some people, it's an NDE. How many people have had near-death experiences and they come back being activated with a whole new experience of reality? So the 4D is what happens when we hit the other side of the veil, and then we get to start seeing what's really happening in the world. And then we start up this spiritual spiral. So the 4D is the spiritual spiral that we all go through to get into 5D.
Absolutely. That's amazing. What I heard about 2012 was that the events that happened on December the 21st, 2020, was actually the time of that should have been 2012. And there were 8 days in a week. I think it was a Georgian or the Gregorian calendar. I cannot remember, but one of those two had 8 days in a week. And I believe we also had 13 horoscopes. So they've really, twisted and changed and destroyed what we had to confuse us so that we're not aware of this event and to take us, away from this. And this is what, all of these things, the band-aids that they want us to put in our arms, to stop us from ascending. So that's quite interesting. So there are many people in 3D, and there are many people also in 4D. Now, when you're in 4D and you're enjoying that ascension and you're meditating and you're speaking to like-minded people and listening to meditation music, and you're always in that love frequency. Sometimes, there can be something like my brother went through the other day where money was missing from his account and he had to call the banks, and the banks are saying, well, we don't know when we're going to give you this money back. There needs to be an investigation. And that sort of lowered his frequency, and he feels like, he feels quite bad. And, what do I do? So there are little things in life that brings us back down. So what are the things that you advise people in 3D who are going into 4D and who are maybe weak in 4D, but they want to strengthen their 4D reality? What do you advise for them?
Well, part of it is understanding that this is part of the process. So the 4D is where we process our lives. And it isn't necessarily that he's gone backwards into 3D, but what happens is that we start spiraling upwards. And as we spiral upward, we let go of everything that we can't take with us into the higher dimensions of reality. As we spiral upward, we start letting go of everything that doesn't serve us. So what happens is we'll start to spiral upward, and then we'll get what we'd call a test, right? So you hit a plateau, then there's a test to see if you can stay there. It's not that he's dropped back down. It's just that he's on a step, if you will. So on that step, then we're being tested. Have you actually learned the lesson, and can you maintain that level? And then sometimes we'll sit there for a while, and then we'll start spiraling upward again. So it feels like 2 steps up, 1 step back. It's really 2 steps forward, sit, pause, integrate, test, then up again.
I see. Got it.
So it's really about sitting in that and bringing your spiritual awareness into the physical experience. So instead of allowing ourselves, it's not that, one of the misperceptions is that anger isn't okay if you're in a higher reality, right? Anger is perfectly okay. It exists in 4D as much as it does in 3D, and to allow ourselves to be human beings and to experience what it means to be human. So one of the misperceptions is that if you're up there and you're high on spirit and high on life, you don't feel anger and depression and sadness and all of that. That is not true. Those are all emotions that are part of being a human being. And we came in to experience being a human being. So if we shut off all of the emotions that come with being a human being, we're not allowing ourselves the very experience we incarnated for. So it's important to allow ourselves to feel those emotions of frustration and anger and sadness and all of those. But what happens is that people tend to wallow in them. And that's when you get stuck on a level in your spiritual plateau. And so the key is to recognize the experience and to recognize all of the emotions that are going with the experience. Now, again, we were talking about earlier, spiritual bypassing. Don't try to bypass it, because what people tend to do is they shove it down and they pretend it doesn't exist. I feel fine, or get upset with themselves for feeling these emotions, and understand that those are perfectly normal responses to circumstances, and allow yourself to feel them and then process the feeling. So we can't bypass our way to ascension. We have to move through it and process every experience as it comes along. This is about looking at each of those experiences from a loving perspective, from a higher perspective. So one of the things I teach people is to begin with gratitude. How can I look at this experience through the eyes of gratitude? What is it that Spirit is trying to teach me through this experience? How can I approach this experience more consciously and more lovingly? And that diffuses the strength of the event itself, because we're consciously choosing to respond to it rather than just unconsciously react to it. So circumstances like that will happen in life, and it's how we respond to them that dictates how long we stay in the suffering.
I love that. I mean, that's just another perspective for me as well that I would like to put in practice. So thank you. And I'm sure the viewers love that too. So what kind of things would someone feel when they're in 5D?
5D is pure bliss.
I hear that it's telepathy and you know, all of that kind of stuff.
It's that actually starts in 4D.
Right.
In
Right.
higher 4D. Yeah. So that's one of the misperceptions, is that is a 5D thing, and it's higher 4D. Once you cross into the lower 4D is the lower heart. So what's happening in 4D is that our heart is starting to open up. 5D is a heart-based, love-based reality. 4D, we're navigating the difference between the fear-based reality and the love-based reality. It's where the heart starts to get activated. So in lower 4D, person first wakes up, they're in a lower 4D, and then they start going up the spiritual spiral. And what happens a lot of times is that the first part of the spiritual spiral happens very, very quickly. People, like, it feels like a rocket taking off, going up the spiritual spiral, because it's like, woo, suddenly starting to understand so much that we didn't understand before. So it's like light speed up the spiritual spiral, and then it starts to slow down, because the work becomes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper as we process our lives and process all of the pain stories and process all of the relationships. And that's also then where we start processing past lives, and we start doing karmic resolution, and we start healing all of who we've ever been across all concepts of time and space. And the higher 4D is allowing us to do that where we've never been able to do that before.
Right.
In every lifetime we've ever had before, every lifetime has been separate, and every universal concept has been separate, and we've only been able to live that one lifetime. In the higher 4D, we're able to heal every aspect of every life that has ever been here, so that all of us gets to ascend.
Right. So when as we're waking up and we're moving into the higher 4D and then hopefully, over to 5D, when people say, we should start remembering our past lives, would you suggest that, maybe we might be doing something and then maybe a memory might just pop up, or, like a vague memory starts to come into your mind, or would it need a lot of meditation and stuff like that?
Well, I don't think, number one, I don't use the word should, because that's a fear-based word. But we don't necessarily have to do past life regression. We don't have to have past life memories. Some of us just do. I've had some past life memories, and they've been mind-blowing to have the past life memories. In my particular case, it's because I needed to have those memories to remember who I am and why I'm here. We don't have to do that work. We don't have to go into past life memories. Some of us, in my case, I'm a very old soul. I have thousands of lifetimes. I don't need to go into every single one of them. So you can actually have all of those past lifetimes healed without having to go into the memory of any of them. A lot of people have a memory of how they transitioned out of their past their most recent lifetime. This is actually very common. A lot of kids remember how they died in their past life, but it's not shown to them necessarily that way. So for me, when I was a child, I had this dream all the time that I was like a middle-aged woman. I was wearing a yellow dress and I was running, and I had been with machine guns chasing me, and they shot me in the back with a machine gun. And then I fell over and I landed on this, I was on a beach or in the sand and landed on this rock. And when I was little, I asked my mom about it. And my mom said, that's a premonition of how you're going to die. And you're going to die because what did she say? Because of our religion. You believe so much in our religion that you're willing to die for it. So, but as a child, I was like, I'm not going to believe in my religion that much because I don't want to die for it. And it took me years to understand that was actually how I transitioned out of my most recent life experience. And I know now, because I got more information about it, that was, I was a Jewish sympathizer during the Holocaust, and I was helping to rescue Jews, and I was hunted down and shot for helping to rescue Jews. And I'm a freedom fighter. That is what my soul does. Every life that I've had here is about freeing some aspect of humanity from the fear-based reality that it's in one of my lifetimes. So I grew up on a plantation in the South, and my family had, plantation and all these slaves, and I was actually freeing my family's slaves. They didn't appreciate that.
Right. Right.
But that's what I do. I'm here to help free humanity. And so for me, having those past life memories was important, but we don't have to dive into them. So sometimes when we go into the past suffering, we bring it up and then we have to process it. We don't actually have to go into it to process it, because one of the great and extraordinary things that has happened since the 3D 4D convergence is that a lot of people have had their healing gifts activated and those spiritual gifts activated. So now there are healers out there who can help you process your entire string of lifetimes across all concepts of time and space without having to go into any of the trauma and drama of those lifetimes.
I see. So, what can someone do to maybe remember their most recent past life? What kind of exercises do you think they could do to remember that?
I think finding someone that can help them do that is the easiest way.
Right.
Mainly because human beings go into self-doubt. So we might be wondering if this is actually the truth, if this is what we're remembering, or if we're just making it up. Mm-hmm. So because doubt gets in the way, and doubt is fear-based, it's better to have someone who does that as their spiritual gift, their line of their soul's work, to help remember past life experiences.
Absolutely. So as we move forward, and hopefully 5D is coming, in the future some point, where all these frequencies are going to be released and everything, and it raises our consciousness. Do you think that, is it possible that we could just start remembering our past lives and it will just be like a distant memory that we'll just have access to in our brains?
I think so.
Yeah, I would like to think so too.
Yeah. What's really important when we have those experiences, it's at least for me, what my experience has been to this point, and this might not be in 5D. In 5D, we'll be able to remember the good parts of our past lives. What tends to happen because of where we presently are. So when we look back on our current life and we're processing our life in the 4D, so life processing is vital to getting into 5D, because we can't take our emotional and spiritual baggage with us into 5D. So we have to be willing to look at even the most painful stories of our present life experience and transmute them into love. And that takes work. And which is why a lot of people want to bypass 4D, because the work that's required in order for us to get through upper 4D and into 5D requires that we process our lives. And in the past, we weren't able to process our lives until after we died. Well, 4D gives us the ability to process our lives here and now so that we can move into heaven on earth. And so right now, with past life memories, just like with our physical life memories, it's the trauma that we're remembering and processing the trauma from those past lives. So for me, for example, in this most recent past life, I discovered that what I had done was I sent my husband and my children away to Europe, and I stayed behind to help rescue the Jewish people. And I still had guilt in this physical experience for the choice I made of sending away my husband and my kids.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of self-forgiveness work for the choice I made in my most recent past lifetime. And I have another lifetime memory where I was tied up and my throat was slit and made an example of to this group that I was a part of what happens when you don't do what the Catholic Church tells you to do. And because of something I had done, there were over 300 people that were hunted down as witches and were murdered. And I had to forgive myself. I could feel in my body the guilt again for allowing over 300 people to be murdered because I didn't do my job. I was a gatekeeper for a spiritual group, and I let some people in from the Catholic Church that were basically spies. And then they went in and they murdered every single one of us. But because I was the gatekeeper, they held me up as the example of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to do some self-forgiveness work for something that happened in the 1500s.
Wow. It's
And
very interesting. Please.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So people don't necessarily need to do that if they have a past life regression healing person that they can work with. And I interviewed someone, her name was Shirley, a couple of months ago on my show, Fearless and Free TV. And she's phenomenal. So I did a session with her, and she took me all the way back through all of my thousands of lifetimes, back to my very first human incarnation, and processed all the rest of it. And it only took an hour to do. And I didn't have to do all that painful work because it can all be done energetically.
Right. So when you say you remember your past lives, how vivid are your memories? I mean, do you remember the weather? Do you remember what you was wearing or what the people looked like? I know I'm just really curious.
Not the weather so much, but as I said, in my last lifetime, I was wearing a yellow dress. It was a long floor-length dress. But sometimes I also get impressions that come with it. So the impression that came with it was I was a baroness. And it was, and I was like, well, where did I live? And the response was, well, it wasn't Germany and it wasn't Austria. And so I had to do some research to find out that there was a point when Austria and Germany were the same thing, Austria-Germany, for a short period of time. So apparently I was a baroness during that time, and I had this big mansion and sent my husband and kids away. And then I was hiding people in my house under the floorboards of my house.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that all got found out. I was hiding money under the floorboards too. And the money was found. And it's sitting in a vault in Switzerland. It's still there. It's been there for 75 years. I have no idea how to access it, but apparently there's a bunch of money that got put away. And so that memory is still there, but as far as the details, I don't have the details. The lives before that, I hadn't really thought about what I was wearing when they broke in or any of that. It was just such a traumatic experience.
Right.
And it was so long ago. I don't remember the details. I just remember the experience and the feeling that came with the experience.
Have you met any soulmates in this lifetime where you feel that you were together in that lifetime in the 1500s where you was, hiding people?
No, no, I have met people who were in the lifetime with me when I was here with Yeshua, and I've met half a dozen other people that were there at the same time.
Hmm.
But those other lifetimes, I haven't met anybody who has the same memory. Actually, no, I can't say that because there is someone that I met. I was also part of liberating the Jewish people from Egypt,
Right.
and I have met one other person who is also a part of that.
That's so interesting. Wow. Well, Victoria, it's been absolutely amazing having you on. It's so interesting to know about, past lives, especially, and, the ascension from 3D, 4D, and to 5D. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Okay, so yes, one quick thing. So I recorded a video last night on
Sure.
my YouTube channel so that people can dive into 4D some more and understand it even better than I've explained here. The one thing I want to say more than anything else is that as we're moving through the 4D life process, to be compassionate with yourself because it is not an easy experience. A lot of people have this impression that you're just going to like make the leap from 3D to 5D and it's all good. 4D is where the processing happens. And processing our lives is not easy. Sometimes it's very painful. It's letting go of beliefs and people and experiences and circumstances that don't serve our progression. And it can be very, very painful. And it can be very uncomfortable. And uh, and that in that process to be really, really compassionate with yourself. What a lot of people might find is what I call reparenting ourselves. So we're going in and we're reconstructing who we are, and to be compassionate because it can be really painful and really difficult, and to remember to love ourselves through the process. And one of the things I've done for myself when I've been in these really difficult times is to hold myself the way that I would hold my hurt children,
Mhm.
and to love myself that way with all the love and all the compassion that a mother feels for a hurt child. And another thing we can do is remember the Divine Mother, that the Divine Mother is holding us with that kind of compassion and to love ourselves that way. Even as we're going through it and it hurts so much, the disbelieving and the shadow processing that we all have to go through, and to love ourselves through it and be compassionate and patient with ourselves through it because it isn't easy for anyone. And be compassionate with other people who are in the process as well, because we're all going through it at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, Victoria, if you send me the link of the video that you show, the 4D video, I'm happily put it in the description below and that people can follow you as well. But thank you so, so much. It's been an honor to have you on my show, and God bless you.
Thank you, and likewise.